I'm delusional enough to think that if you can consistently get Challenger in League of Legends, you can solve any problem this universe throws in front of your booty cheeks IRL. Only to win and putting your best effort to perform and solve the current situation in any given league game that is presented to you is based on your mental toughness, as well as the general approach your mentality takes towards challenges in life. I was a hard-stuck Platinum/Emerald player for 10 years, and after finally playing in Diamond for a while now, I can clearly say 90% of it was a mental barrier, and not because I didn't have 10 CS per minute. Why do people rise through the ranks at different speeds? Why are some people consistently able to outperform everyone else even though the environment is constantly changing? Every success and the ability to cope with failure and reframing it into a learning opportunity comes down to keeping a good mental, and that is everything. Why am I talking about this topic in the first place? The Good Witch made a comment on my community post. My initial idea was to put a little exploration of the ideas around the topic into one of my intros, and I started writing out points to talk about, and it got longer and longer and longer, and then eventually it would have been a 5-minute intro, which makes no sense, so now you get this video essay without a British accent instead. Part 1. Why mentality trumps everything else. Mentality in League of Legends is really everything. It's the foundation of anything relating to success in this game and translates to all areas in your life. People tend to think it's just a game, but your mentality and learnings from outside of League translate to your progress as well as the other way around. If you have a difficult time keeping your attention on important things in your day-to-day life for whatever reason, could be me with my ADHD, it will create trouble in your game-to-game experience as well. Guaranteed. You should care about your mental inside of League because it will translate into your life. I think we can all relate to having a bad, terrible, unlucky day of games in SoloQ, and your whole day is just doomed and you're in a bad mood. What we don't tend to think about, however, is that it is the same effect the other way around. If you just come home from running a marathon or just doing well in the gym, submitting your uni papers before the deadline, totally relatable. So you won't have to worry about them anymore and then play SoloQ. Your focus and mood will be uplifted and that energy will translate to a better performance in your games. Or even simpler, if you play 10 games a day, in your 11th game and onwards, you will never be as focused as in your first game. Mental exhaustion is a real thing, but it's difficult to wrap your head around how much it actually affects us inside of the game when we are constantly confronted by so much information and emotion and variance. Part 2. Why people rise through the ranks at different speeds. Why do people rise through the ranks at different speeds? How come there are people with 10 million mastery points in silver? Is it genetics? Is it destiny or luck? Some people climb all the way up to diamond in their first season and some people drop all the way to iron. In order to understand why that happens, we have to understand what the League SoloQ ladder is about. It's a meritocracy in which learning, adaptability and execution gets rewarded. It sounds boring compared to the potential of seeing Fakers or Rihanna getting a penta shockwave in a World's Finals game in front of 100 million viewers, but League at its core is learning under competitive conditions. QE? Sui Cupi? CUY conducted a study in 2024 that compared over 100 students' performances, which were separated into a regular learning group and a competitive learning group. Results showed significantly increased anxiety and higher cognitive load among the competitive group. The end effect of this overload of the competitive students' mental stacks were lower levels of attention and lower scores on the final test, confirming that emotional overwhelm can significantly decrease one's ability to control emotions, learning ability, and ultimately compete. A reason for the difference in the time that players take to improve is a fundamental misunderstanding of the game, paired with a lack of self-criticism. I know this too well from personal experience. You learn something from someone who is essentially spreading misinformation about the game, knowingly or unknowingly.
Here are 3 tips to instantly get better at climbing on League. The first is to learn to communicate.
You accept that it is a reality and now you're stuck with this false information that perpetuates and reinforces your behavior in-game, and ultimately leads to you losing more games than you win because your brain space is taken up by this irrelevant nonsense. All of these bigger content mill publications like Skillcapped and Pro Guides publicize the most useless advice content anyone could imagine. Their video production value is high and that tricks people into thinking they know what they're talking about. Now there are people in your games trying to put that advice into practice and are essentially running it down. And I don't want to make it sound like a simple issue. Again, I was stuck for 10 years. The ability to course correct and constantly question yourself, constantly self-criticize all of your actions while dodging the super popular but extremely false information out there requires an insane amount of self-confidence, which is not very common in general and even less so in gaming communities. When you start off on your League journey, it often feels like the game should be win lane, win game. Our brain demands a reward for good performance. Now what happens when we lose the game despite winning lane? Chemically, our brain will essentially punish us for good performance. If we don't fully understand that League is a game of variance, and that we don't have full control over the outcome of the game, we become confused. Since our hypothetical brain doesn't have the self-confidence to criticize itself and think about what we could have actually done better, it defaults to blaming external factors. This teammate lost lane, we lost a teamfight at 40 minutes because of this teammate, etc. There are many examples. This kind of belief comes from a place of ego, because we reflect accountability outwards, and that is the exact opposite of self-confidence, which comes from the, well, confidence that we can resolve the action of taking accountability for difficult situations inside ourselves. Anxiety is one of the most limiting emotions that is regularly discussed on the League subreddits. Research has shown that increasing anxiety can lead to behaviors in competitive environments that motivate participants to opt for low-effort strategies in which they try to win by not losing, and by doing so impair their own learnings. Anxiety is created by situations with extreme pressure. For example, a jungle Baron Smite 50-50 situation or a tower dive. Maybe just simply playing a laning phase matchup that you're not familiar with. If we don't confront these anxiety-inducing situations, it will lead to avoidance. Think Malzahar Galio players, basically anything that tries to dodge the interaction with your opponent. Maybe next time you decide to not attend Baron at all or play the lane passively, giving your opponents a winning option by default. There's a concept called the anxiety cycle, which starts off with anxiety, moves to avoidance, which then gives you short-term anxiety relief because the pressure is not present anymore, and on the final step leads to long-term anxiety growth. For me personally, with any anxiety in my life, confronting it through exposure has always helped me overcome it, or at least lower the intensity of the feeling. Being okay with the temporary discomfort lets your brain realize that whatever creates the emotion is not as bad as you thought, ultimately breaking the cycle. If you let it perpetuate and feed off of itself, the cycle will continue and become stronger, making it more difficult to break through with every completion, and that can become seriously limiting. If you make a mistake, you need the confidence to understand what went wrong, take accountability for the things that were in your control, and accept that everything that's not in your control is genuinely not in your control. It is what it is. Which is much more difficult than it sounds, because in the heat of the moment, your emotions will try to override your logic, and emotions always successfully override logic. So in order to actually overcome any of the talking down to yourself or tying the outcome of a single game to your self-worth issues, you need the ability to properly regulate your emotions. If you can't hold back your emotions in that scenario, they will 100% of the time override your logic and make you act anyways. Furthermore, on the topic of judgment, you will be judged by others. And in a way you have to be selfish enough to say, I am here to improve myself for myself through my own actions, for which I will take ultimate accountability, regardless of the effect it has on the outcome of the game and other players inside of it. It is their responsibility to manage their own journey and not yours. That is why I always mute all. If I miss information that is happening in the game, it is my own fault and not my team's fault that they didn't ping. Through muting chat and pings, I am 100% responsible for the collection and processing of all information, which gives me ultimate agency and makes the learning process much less confusing. Dare I say, fun? Sorry. Every aspect of one's League journey is very personal. Some people have trouble focusing on the details of a fight, while another person has trouble keeping their emotions stable through a 40-minute back and forth, so the value of each player varies massively based on all of these factors. That is why comparing yourself to others is completely irrelevant. We do it anyways, of course, but logically it makes no sense. In order to get to Platinum 4, every single player had a different journey. Different problems to overcome, and going forward from there, we'll have to do the same thing again. Not every rank is created equal. Maybe someone is great at emotional control and solving 1v1 situations, and other people are great at minimizing their lane and then winning teamfights. And that got them to Emerald. Furthermore, every time someone reaches, for example, Platinum 4, one person is forced to leave this rank behind and go back to Gold 1 as well. Your rank is not a participation trophy. You're actively kicking other people down the ranks with every one of your wins. That is just part of the journey. Some players may struggle with emotional roadblocks for years before they are able to move to the next rank. Or they get so caught up in their own mind that they might actively be getting worse. Another aspect of this competition is that everyone constantly gets better. A challenger player from 10 years ago might not even be on the level of your average gold player today. Subsequently, the means through which we can learn the game have changed as well. We have more experience in explaining the important aspects, or at least some people do. Skill Cap doesn't. I know it's the second time I'm mentioning them, but it's really annoying when some of the most popular educational content out there is the worst advice you can give to someone. Jesus Christ. Let's take this quote-unquote beginner's guide, which is almost 50 minutes long, as an example. To be fair, they attempt to explain the basic concepts of the game, where to click, what tower platings are, etc. But they're also listing off how much HP and damage different minions do in the game, and I can guarantee you that is information not even Faker could recite. Not because he couldn't if he learned or cared about it, but because knowing about it is completely irrelevant. What is relevant is how the minion damage feels to you and how you evaluate that feel of the damage in the context of the given game situation. If you last hit a minion, you're not thinking about the minion having 53 HP, the tower shot doing 40 damage and your basic attack hitting for 25. But that is exactly what is being promised to beginners here. And every beginner watching this is not only getting bombarded with irrelevant math and will ultimately fail to understand how they should go about learning the game. If they decide to look at the comment section, the first two they will find are from players blaming their Emerald teammates and refusing to take accountability for their own games. You can't make this shit up. I really want to drive this point home because it does make all the difference. A bit further down is a comment which almost makes me kind of sad. Here's a new player, inspired by Arcane, genuinely interested in learning this great game, and he accidentally stumbles upon this terrible advice which will either result in him quitting eventually, or worst case scenario, turn him into one of these commenters who not only blame their teammates but go out of their way to blame them in a YouTube comment section. Ranking up in League of Legends is no joke. We can make memes about it, but the reality is it's a hardcore meritocracy, and every inch of ground that you can overcome to further your team, to kill the enemy nexus matters. Every distraction matters. That is why we can respect League ranks in the first place. The least distracted, most experienced will always win the long run. Part 3, I think? Why can toxic people outperform calm people? A calm, laser-focused mind with stable emotions is the key to improvement. But why do we see so many toxic players reach higher ranks? Skills that need to be developed to destroy the enemy nexus aren't social skills. There's also something called the Yerkes-Dodson law, and it explains that arousal from any emotion up to a certain point increases focus. Anger or frustration are strong emotions, and if we put them in contrast with sadness and tiredness, we can intuitively feel why they could enhance our senses and therefore performance. Furthermore, if we get angry at your own mistakes, that emotion can burn this mistake into your brain, which makes it less likely to repeat said mistake in the future. This is ultimately a downward spiral though. If you repeat an angry demeanor towards your teammates for too long, you will stop taking accountability and decrease your skill. That is what most commonly happens and gets toxic people stuck at certain ranks. Whenever that happens, they go on massive losing and griefing sprees, which are the level 30 inting accounts you will encounter in your games from time to time. They can't actually win. Then they lose confidence in themselves, their ego gets hurt, and to compensate, they try to take control back by shifting their own goal from winning to the much easier option of intentionally losing. Tyler 1's behavior in his early career was a prime example of exactly this cycle. Very toxic for several reasons. The aggressiveness and toxicity came from his passion. He was competing on Twitch for viewers and in League for LP. He knows if he wants to get attention, he has to entertain and perform on both levels. He ultimately gave up on many accounts which he couldn't get ranked up because his emotional state was so extreme there was no room for mental clarity and actual good performance in game. Very beneficial for his career through the entertainment value, but in terms of competing in League, he had no chance anymore. After his permanent ban and the entire reformed arc, he brought it back to being focused towards genuine performance, which worked well. But still, even his later climbs came with a lot of variance due to the lack of emotional stability. It usually took him thousands of games to achieve Challenger rank, while more stable players take between 200 and 300 games on average. He had to beat the increase of variance coming from his emotional gameplay through volume. This process needs an insane amount of mental strength, which he had already built up through his sports background. Working out and playing competitive American football helped him create this relentless, focused grind mindset. And I think that is one of the aspects that most people agree to respect about Tyler 1 in general, even if you dislike his comedy/entertainment style. Okay, that's all nice and interesting, I hear you say, because of the voices in my head, but how do we actually achieve mental clarity? I don't know if there's one way to fix everyone's issues, since a lot of it comes from your upbringing, how you were raised and which people you have met and learned from in your own personal life, but I can explain my approach and what has worked for me. I think mental clarity at its peak is the entire package of healthy body, healthy mind, healthy environment. And I know personally too well that it's essentially impossible for most people to achieve this state, especially in the short term. So here's my straight up, no bullshit suggestion. Deal with whatever you have to deal with and do something about it. One step at a time, one day at a time. You set a goal, you fulfill that goal as if your life depends on it, and also when it literally depends on it. As an example, I started to work out over 3 years ago now, and the reason why I'm consistently able to do that is because I would rather die than not do it every single day, every single morning. It might sound very motivational video story-ish, a bit cringe, but I did this with peace. Accepting that you are going to do it no matter what, without any crazy motivation or emotion, is really like mentally freeing. When I was sick I worked out, when I was on vacation I worked out, when I was hiking up a mountain with a friend and was completely exhausted, I would do my routine on the street right there. That's just what it took for me, because I know if I skipped a single day, I'd lose the momentum, and it just put my mind to peace. This learning, combined with the improvements to my physical health, helped massively with my psychological stability as well. For League at the start of the year, to get to Diamond, I approached the process in a very similar way. I play League to reach that goal every single day, no matter what happens in life. Also, if I know I'm going to play at least 3 games a day, it takes off the pressure of looking at the results only. I was able to focus on the learnings much more consistently. I mean, it's recorded and all on this channel if you want to look at the way I was thinking back then. These kind of actions help your mind to let go of unnecessary emotional clutter, letting go of getting riled up in emotional downward spirals, and letting go of the need to interact with players in solo queue and their provocative behavior. If they get triggered by something, you do have a choice of letting go. This is one of the most difficult aspects of League of Legends, because at the end of the day it is a team game, it is not a friendly game. There's one player in particular who has mastered this art of letting go and being at peace, while other people try to ruin his experience. And he became famous for his mentality. That mentality even has an Urban Dictionary entry, so it must be very popular, right? And that player is Maggie Felix. Maggie Felix? Maggie Felix, yes. With the Maggie Felix mental, an EU West player who reached rank 1. While rank 1 is impressive, and not very many people, in comparison to the entire player base, have ever reached that position, nor will be in their entire lifetime, at one point Maggie Felix reached not only rank 1, but simultaneously also rank 4, rank 6, rank 7, and rank 24, with 5 different accounts in Challenger. He held over 22,000 LP hostage on his own. Due to his extreme social anxiety, he is unable to perform professionally, but the Maggie Felix mental is nothing short of inspiring. It shows how impactful and necessary your mental actually is for solo queue performance. League of Legends is about confidence. Believing in your own ability to execute, accepting random happenings, and moving on from difficult bad luck and good luck streaks. Losing 10 or even 20 games in a row can feel like the deepest pit of despair your brain could ever experience, and you question existence itself. You lose confidence, and it feels like the entire universe tries to keep you down, because we know getting unlucky for 20 games in a row and just losing to random chance is possible. However, understanding that while keeping our emotional state neutral would mean that we don't care about our performance. Accepting that and still going into the next game with the belief that you can and will win takes an unbelievable amount of trust in the universe as well as in yourself. And I don't want to downplay how difficult it really is. When you're trying to get up there and you don't even know what is going wrong, it can be a disturbing feeling in your chest that burns your heart out. I think we have to take this process more seriously and respect everyone who attempts to go through this. Not only the 5 people who make it to the top, but the 50 million who attempt to just start off their journey at the foot of the mountain, as well as those who have failed at the foothill for years and still gather strength to try again. Furthermore, this is not about detachment. It's about accepting yourself for who you are and accepting where you are at in your own journey despite whatever external opinion might contradict your personal judgment. Increasing your self-confidence, understanding that you can count on yourself, and putting the best you have to offer out there in one of the harshest, competitive social environments human beings have ever invented, which is solo queue Summoner's Rift. And that's it. This has been my biggest project yet. I hope it can help some people gain a new perspective or evoke motivation to discuss certain topics again that we have taken for granted. I would appreciate if you shared this content with people you think might need to hear this, or just engage in discussion in the comment section or whatever platform this ends up being shared. And with everything being said, good luck on your journey. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day and enjoy.